Chapter 5 of Deliver Me from Eva by Paul Bailey. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. Chapter 5. The afternoon passed comfortably and almost too quickly. After Eva retired to her quarters, I began the sampling of my room's attractions. A season of good reading lay shelved and waiting for me, but I was wearied from last night's train ride, and eyed the pale leather sofa with an indolent man's delight. After Margot, Ava's tall, oldish, and rather handsome maid, cleared away the meal's dishes and silently glided out with her cart, the whole house settled down to the oppressive silence of a tomb. The phonograph saved me from a headlong plunge into mental depression, for in mind I still was jousting with all the strange problems so suddenly raised by my marriage to Ava Craner. I played Franck's D minor symphony and listened through to its hypnotic finish. By then I was ready to surrender myself to the sofa. When I awoke, the dusk of evening had laid itself heavily upon the room. I must have been dreaming, for I arose with a shudder of fear. The whole room seemed to be smothering in something abysmal and terrifying, and I endeavored, as I stared into the gloom, to recall what hallucinations of sleep might have so plunged me into fright's black abyss. No detail surrendered itself to mind, and soon I was bravely endeavoring to laugh off my unmanly fears. I stretched my cramped muscles, arose, and flipped the wall switch. My trepidation fled with the light, and I gaped around me with interest at the glowing panels of tubed brightness which attested to my wife's most curious ingenuity. I stepped up to the adjoining bathroom, shaved, and completed my toilet. The change to dinner dress was finished in my shiningly new bedroom. It was 30 minutes or so before I returned to my study, and by now it was fully dark. Ava had not yet made her appearance. A browsing amid the room's literacy treasures proved the weakest of substitutes for the pleasurable company of the creature I had married, and every vestige of melancholia soon fled in the lively hopes of her appearance. But minutes dragged along, and love made me impulsively alive. A moment later, in blithe disregard of manners, I had crossed the music room on my way to her chambers. Masculine assertiveness carried me farther. I burst unannounced into the room she had informed me as being her study. The sight which met my gaze snatched my breath away. In the very center of this circular room, beneath a ceilinged battery of therapeutic lamps, was a padded treatment table of white leather, similar to those used by osteopaths and spinal doctors. Stark naked, face upward, and with her head in a nickeled clamp, was Ava. The folded towel, shielding her eyes from the lamp's rays, prevented her seeing me. Her beautiful hair hung downward from the metal apparatus in which her head was cradled. Margot, the big maid who had served us at noon, was in the precise act of pressing and kneading at my wife's skull. To be seen was to be shamed, and I stood dumbly for a moment in Blunder's tracks. But Margot spied me. With a little squeal of surprise she ceased her ministrations, and with frantic modesty flung a sheet over Ava's voluptuous nakedness. "Oh, I'm sorry," I cried, and hurriedly backed out the door. But there was a slight Rabelaisian smile on my face as I walked my intruding self to the big living room. For 10 minutes I sat before the fire, mentally digesting the thing I had witnessed. Apparently Ava had some odd ritual pertaining to the cranium, hints of which had filtered through to me on our past days together. The burst of musical frenzy at the Argonaut's piano had been preceded by a pressing of hands to the skull. Other times there had been too, yet so casual were they I had considered them in the nature of a habitual gesture. There was no inclination on my part to pass off anything Ava did in ridicule, and too, the brief vision of her womanly beauty, centered as it were and spotlighted, had excited and disturbed me. I could muster no shadow of regret for my unseemly entry. The woman in nature's most fundamental pose was my wife, and frankly, I thought it was wonderful. 10 minutes later, Osmond Kramer had breezed into my study and was introducing himself, and Osmond, as solemnly we shook hands, quickly wiped away most of my preconceptions regarding him. "This is rather an important moment in our lives," he was saying as we lighted cigarettes and casually studied one another. For one thing, I had imagined Osmond the puny musician. Before me stood a dark-eyed youth, who conceivably might have been America's god of football, deep-chested, muscular, with an abundance of curly brown hair above a virile and clean-cut face. Osmond became number 2 surprise of the family I'd married into. It's important, I agreed, and so astonishing it's taken my breath away. I've dropped rather abruptly into your circle, Osmond, and I do hope I'll make a tolerable brother-in-law. Osmond's eyes twinkled in Eva's manner, and I liked him. No complaints to my knowledge, he chuckled, and I know I'm satisfied. Thanks, I said, blowing a cloud of smoke. We'll get along first rate. Do be seated. I imagine it will be some minutes before Eva's ready. I paused and smiled at my thoughts. She isn't quite dressed. Probably at her cranial manipulation, he casually answered. She's calendared at this time. More mystery, I groaned. Osmond grinned. I imagine you found the Craners a bit odd. I found the Craners a singular family indeed. You, a musician, Eva talented beyond anything I've ever seen in a woman. Then she told you about me? Osmond asked it eagerly. She certainly did, and I hope your debut is a sensation. I'm vain enough to think it will be a sensation. But it's still 6 months away, really, Mr. Allard. Mark, I smilingly corrected. Really, Mark, I feel I have much to give the world. I'm sure of it, I agreed. You'll never fail if you're at all like your lovely sister. I never thought of the possibility of failure. Father never allows that word to be uttered in his presence. Tell me, Osmond, what is this mysterious cranial manipulation of which you spoke? Nothing mysterious when you know the law of its accomplishment. My father will explain it to you. But what's the theory? How does it work? It's quite a story, Mark. Father intends to make all of it known when he talks to you. By now my curiosity was insatiably aroused. Can't you give me some idea? I insisted. Well, briefly, he said, and hesitated while he thoughtfully tapped the ashes from his cigarette. Briefly, it has long been held by the medical world that the skull, as a housing for the brain and all sense perceptions, was an unpliable bony structure incapable of expansion or contraction, and destined to remain in the rigid pattern in which nature and environment had molded it. My father has learned differently. That the contour of the skull can be changed? Far more than that, Mark. You're acquainted, of course, with the anatomical composition of the skull. It's made up of segments, I replied, glad that I could add one material bit to the erudite circle into which I was plunged. That's right. Bony plates, fitted together with sutures of sawtooth perfection. It was my father's belief that if the skull plates were to remain rigid and unmovable, nature would never have left those hinged and fitted joints. After considerable experimenting, it was found that these sutures were movable. A field of therapy that will revolutionize the world is the result. But what is the theory? It's no longer a theory, as you shall see. Manipulation of the skull plates allows expansion, exercise, and growth to any particular seat of intelligence or control within the human concept. It opens vistas of accomplishment undreamed of in human annals. There is much more to it. Osmond paused, crushed out the lighted end of his cigarette on the ashtray, and eyed me soberly. Mark, he said, you are now in possession of a portion of the secret that will change this sick world, and make gods of men. After what I had seen and learned, I hesitated to scoff. At least a little of the mystery of my odd marriage had revealed itself to scrutiny. I finished my cigarette in silence. Like a rabbit in a pathologist's cage, all I could do was wonder. Your father seems to be a gifted sort, I finally ventured. Both you and Eva speak of him in awe and reverence. And why not? Osmond asked, flinging his cigarette butt into the fire. My father, in conquering his own physical defects, has opened wide vistas of hope to mankind. His children are and have been the guinea pigs for his experiments. Mighty handsome guinea pigs, I declared. Your mother, you never speak of her. Dead, I suppose? To this world, Osmond replied with thoughtful shake of his handsome head. Except for the last year's world tour, in company with our tutors, Eva and I have known no other place than this, the cradle of light, as father calls it. In the accepted sense, there has never been a mother for us here. We have father, and that is enough. I refrained from probing what apparently to him was painful, yet the thought of a man born without legs or ears, siring such exquisitely perfect children struck me as a biological novelty, to say the least. The chance for further pursuance of the quest ended with Ava's entry. I arose to my matchlessly groomed and perfumed vision in white satin and furs. May heaven and hell be my witness. No more beautiful creature had ever illumined the world and brightened the life of man. "On with your wraps, gentlemen," she was saying. "Father awaits us at the cradle of light." End of chapter 5.